Warning, there will be spoilers on this show. Please do not send us hate mail. Proceed at your own risk.
Welcome to the First Six podcast. I am half of this show, and my name is Molly Southgate.
And I'm the other half, Tabby Holloway.
And today we are talking to Emmy-nominated Rae Deslich.
Hello.
How are you doing, Rae?
I'm good.
We are so excited to have you here today.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Of course, I'm very happy to be here.
So, what exactly does a set decorator do?
So a set decorator on a movie or a TV show, or on any similar project like a TV commercial or whatever, a set decorator works for the department head, who is called a production designer. And my specific job is to choose all of the furnishings that appear on screen for a project. My joke is it's anything from the walls outward. So the production designer might choose, they'll, build the set, they'll do the walls, the flooring, maybe the wallpaper, wall coverings, and then everything else that goes on that set is me. So furnishings, area rugs, lighting, sofas, chairs, tables, of course, plants of any interior sort, artwork that appears on screen, and then, of course, the prop master takes over from there with anything that's physically handled. So the set decorator is really the person choosing the stuff that fills the environment of a character.
Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
It is. It's a crazy job. I really enjoy it. And, it's something different sometimes something different every day.
Yeah. Tabby, do you want to go ahead and ask the next question?
Can you tell us about your TV and film career?
Sure. So I went to film school in Chicago at Columbia College Chicago, and I started working on independent projects there. I moved back to Los Angeles, where I'm originally from, somewhere in 2010, I think. And I started, I got into my professional union at some point, and then I started kind of working on bigger and bigger projects from there. I would say I'm most known for the TV show Drunk History, which is what I'm Emmy nominated for, as you mentioned. We were nominated twice for that show for Outstanding Production Design for a Variety Show. And we also won an Art Directors Guild Award for that show. And so I did 3 seasons of Drunk History. And then I've also done a whole lot of features. And I've lately been doing a lot of TV shows. So I did the revival of Party of Five. It was on Freeform this winter. And I also did some of the Bachelorette specials. And I also just worked on the reboot upcoming this fall of Supermarket Sweep.
Cool. So how does the vibe differ set to set? Like, because you said you're on Drunk History, but then like a show like Gilmore Girls, like when you were doing The Year in the Life, and then reality shows, like how does that?
It's super different. And I should clarify, on Gilmore Girls, actually, I was the set decoration buyer. So one of 3 people that works for the set decorator. We had 3 shoppers. So the decorator on Gilmore Girls was sort of an industry legend named Linda Spheris. And then on all the other shows that I mentioned, I've been the set decorator. Gilmore Girls was sort of early in my career, which was why I was working for another decorator at the time. The vibe of each of these sets can be so different, and very often in a good way. Sometimes the sets are very quiet and very respectful and very like auteur based, where like there's a lot of deep work between the director and the actor. Sometimes the sets are fun and goofy. Drunk History was a very jokey set. All the writers were also comedians. All of the actors were comedians, or they were just generally funny, chill people. for some reason, we all got really into lock picking, and we would buy those like lock picking training sets on our downtime and like learn how to work them. And it was just like a thing that we all passed around, you know, like you would pass around a book between friends. We were like, oh, have you figured out the master lock yet? You know, and then some sets are, you know, kind of in between. Sometimes they feel like a family. Sometimes they feel like a party. Sometimes they're very high stress and not too chilled, to be honest. That's definitely a thing that happens. But those were, you know, those were some of the real standouts, I would say. And Party of Five had a very family atmosphere, thanks to the original creator being there. Who is a very family type of lady. But they can be very different, and they're all wonderful in their own way.
That is so awesome. Yeah, I've noticed that too, being on different sets. It's like, it's very much impacted by, sometimes it can be impacted by the genre of what you're working on too, which I find interesting.
Yeah, and the subject matter too. I mean, sometimes the subject matter is very serious. And then you have to treat it with the greatest of respect. I did a feature film directed by Emerald Fennell, who is the showrunner for Killing Eve. And that movie hasn't come out yet, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. But there's some very serious subject matter in that movie. So some days you just couldn't even like go near set because you would be breaking someone's concentration. You would be distracting them from like a scene where they had to cry or threaten another character or something serious like that. But then some days we would be doing literally a happy, fun date scene or, you know, like a dance montage. And then it was just a party on set.
Cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So what made you choose this career?
I have always been a very creative person. I grew up building and crafting things in my family. You know, me and my father were building little like kit robots when I was like 7. I've always known how to repair and make things. I think I learned how to sew when I was like 12 and, you know, do various different kinds of crafts. And then I went to film school, of course, and it just became a natural confluence of my abilities and this pre-existing, you know, need and avenue to go down that people would say like, well, how are we going to shoot our student film in the college building, but it's a hospital scene? And you know, because I can kind of look at something and know how it's put together, you can assemble the elements for something in your head. And I would say, oh, well, you know, if we put a sheet over this table, then it'll kind of look like a hospital bed. Or if we hang a hospital curtain in front of this wall, then you can't tell that there's like a boring classroom wall there. And it sort of became that my ability to like assemble environments was very handy. And I've always loved furniture. I've always loved design. I love stuff. You can tell by the house that you can see behind me. I love stuff.
Your house is amazing, by the way.
Thank you. It's just like a little insane. There's a lot of things, and I love, you know, color and texture and different styles. And I, you know, being a set decorator lets me have all of them in my heart. You know, I can't have simultaneously a Victorian house, a mid-century modern house, a industrial chic house, and a, you know, Hollywood Regency glam house all at once. But, you know, in my work, I can have all those things. I can put them up as sets. I can make them happen. I can take photos of them. You know, I can get the joy of choosing the perfect shabby thrift store sofa for a, you know, dive bar rock club's green room or something like that. And I get to, you know, have all of those environments without actually having to, you know, buy them and live in them.
That's really cool.
Oh, yeah. So Did you have to watch the original Gilmore Girls in order to prepare for A Year in the Life?
Yes, we definitely did. Of course, there's so much of it. So we did not watch every single episode. We focused on the first season, one of the seasons in the middle to get sort of like a, snapshot of how things progressed. And also the sixth season. We were told to avoid the seventh season because, as fans of the show will know, the seventh season was done without the involvement of Amy Sherman-Palladino, the creator of the show. And it is considered sort of not a real part of the canon by Gilmore Girls loyalists. So we sort of ended our research at season 6. And we did so much research. There's a lot of fan blogs about Gilmore Girls, which is great. And I would like to thank those people and let them know how helpful they were for us. Very often, they didn't usually know like where furniture was from, or of course they didn't know what had happened to it, but they very often knew when things showed up. So a big part of our research was like screenshot analyzing. We would have screenshots from various episodes, and then we would have some set stills from the original series that somebody had taken, maybe an on-set stills photographer, but they didn't always come with the clearest notes as to when they were taken. So when you had these fan blogs saying things like, well, I noticed that Lorelai's couch in her living room got reupholstered in season such and such, then, you at least knew like what point in time you were choosing to emulate when you decided to use this couch as opposed to that couch. So that was very helpful because, watching the series itself, it gives you an idea, but then you still have to make some judgment calls after that.
That's really cool.
Were places like Tumblr helpful where they've got like all of the like the GIFs and the screenshots and everything like going on there? Or did you stick to mostly like straight up blogs?
Tumblr, and this problem in general with Tumblr, like I need that text. I don't know if Tumblr doesn't have the capacity for captions or if people just don't use it, but it kind of seems to just be a beautiful unlimited field of unattributed images, which are helpful to some extent, but not completely. Not when you're like, I need to know what season this was from, or I need to know, which corner of, the dragonfly in this is, if you can't already tell. Or sometimes, and this is a weird thing, TV sets do in fact change over time, or they might have minor changes per TV episode. Like there might be, the one episode where Rory's bedroom is very messy, or there might be one episode where she is packing to move out to go to Emily's house. And so her room is very bare. And so just looking at that image won't fully give you the context of why it looks that way.
Oh.
So you need the context. And that was the really helpful thing that fan blogs gave us, is it would be a person who had that like built-in ingrained knowledge of the why. And they would put up the image and then they would also have the text explaining why.
That is so fascinating.
That's really cool.
Yeah, they were super helpful. We also had one of those super fans on our staff. Our art department coordinator, Jennifer Horner, was also a Gilmore Girls super fan. So she was sort of like a uncredited researcher that anytime we were completely devoid of context on something, we could be like, Jen, what is this thing? And it was incredibly helpful. You do really need that like institutional memory sometimes. And it had been so long since the original series that we didn't have any of the people who worked on the original series with us. So that institutional memory was kind of something that we had to patch back together.
So did you end up filming on the same set?
For the exteriors, yes. We used, of course, the Midwest Street, which is that little town square and that's on the Warner Brothers backlot. It's very famous. You can take tours there. And that's where some of the town locations, like the candy shop or the grocery store or the dance school or Luke's Diner in its entirety is actually on the Warner Brothers backlot. We used the same exterior houses for Lorelei's house. I don't think we saw Suki's house, maybe, but that is still there as well. We brought the gas station back, Gypsy's gas station, and that is on the Warner Brothers backlot. And then for locations that are off the backlot, we even went back to some of the same ones. So there was a scene where Rory goes back to Chilton, her fancy prep school. And that is at Greystone Manor in Beverly Hills. And of course, it's still there because it's a great big historical house that just hosts events and film shoots. So that was used for Chilton in the original series. And then, of course, we came back to it for A Day in the Life for that scene where Rory visits her alma mater. So where possible, we used all of the same locations. And then the interior sets, of course, those were built on a soundstage. They were in the original, so they had to be rebuilt again. We shot on the same lot. We shot on the Warner Brothers lot. I couldn't say if we shot on the same sound stages, but those had to be completely rebuilt from scratch.
Yeah. So you mentioned like having to do all this research about the characters and about the sets. How did you select the decor for characters to make sure it fits into their style?
So for the ones that were already established, we did our best to bring back and maintain what they had already had set. For example, Lorelei's kitchen was decorated according to her character. So we did our best to replicate that, just photo perfect to the original one. And also Amy Sherman Palladino was involved in this revival, of course. So she really wanted that, that original look, the one that she had liked for her characters to begin with, the one that she'd approved. So where possible, we used sometimes the exact same furniture. Sometimes we were able to find it. For new characters or new environments, for example, Paris Geller's new penthouse, you think of the character as a real person. This is a big part of set decorating, is you think about them as a person, about, their likes and dislikes, the environment that they live in, the history of that character before you have seen them right now. You might add in little things that hint at it, or you might show elements of their character through their environment, or based on the home or office that they chose, things like that. So Paris Geller's apartment is a very upscale, but also very modern apartment. And if I recall correctly, we used a lot of brown and blue because that's sort of a modern color combination. But, it also feels very old money and very elegant and very upscale because she's, we're not trying to make her look like Emily Gilmore. She's not like old school, but she's still money.
Did you have to talk to any of the actors at any point to work through okay, I'm having trouble with this. Would your character use this pillow?
I would say on a project that was not a revival, yes, we absolutely do that all the time. On the feature that I was talking about, which is called Promising Young Woman, we had a meeting with Carey Mulligan before we started shooting because she played the lead character. And we talked with her extensively about what she felt her bedroom would be like, what she felt her corner of her workspace would be like, the personal touches that she would leave on her environment. And Carey Mulligan was able to give us feedback and talk to us about how she felt that she would interact with her environment and the things that she would choose as this character to put around her. For Gilmore Girls, the process was a little bit more streamlined because the characters' personalities and their tastes are so well established by all the work that, seasons 1 through 7 have done already. So it almost gave you like a lookbook to go off of to choose things. Like if we had to add a new element to Emily Gilmore's mansion, for example, there's so much of Emily Gilmore's taste already on screen that you can see that you don't really need to guess at it. You can kind of look at it and say, does this fit in with this character? Or like Lorelai's taste is very well personified by both her house and the Dragonfly Inn. So you can say, like, does this fit the Dragonfly's aesthetic? Does this fit Lorelai's home aesthetic? And, you can use that as sort of like a flavor palette already to see if it fits into.
Cool.
Yeah. So I noticed like the paintings and pictures on the walls of Lorelai's house, those were different. But then I was looking at them for Miss Patty's during the town meeting, and I noticed that the pictures on her wall, the dance pictures, are different, except for a couple of them, which are the same. Same pictures.
Do you mean they are different or the same between the original and the revival?
The original and the revival.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes we had to do that, to be honest. I think there were some, in particular, I think there were some pictures in the lobby of the Dragonfly that we could not literally re-find. And a crazy thing about TV and film using artwork is that we have to have clearance from the creator of that artwork to put it on screen. So if we don't know what artwork that is, then we can't put it on screen. And we didn't have the records, for the most part, of the artwork that was used in the original series, because they just, wrapped it up, put it away. They were like, we're done. See you never. We don't need this anymore. So coming back, we were squinting at these screenshots and we were like, my God, like what piece of artwork is that? It could be anything. So we definitely had to, I think for those lobby, they were like lithographs of teapots or some sort of fanciful drawing of like a teapot and a shoe. And we ended up just having to choose a new version that was very similar and then just go with that. I don't specifically remember what we did in Miss Patty's, but I would guess, based on the fact that some of them were the same and some of them were different, I would guess that we were able to find some of the originals, but not all of them. So we had to fill them in with other ones that were similar.
Yeah, and for this, Tabby and I both rewatched, and so we were sitting there, we were texting each other throughout the week, like, oh, did you pay attention to this set design and this piece? And my biggest question, like my biggest takeaway was, you had to do set decoration for a musical inside of a show.
Inside.
What was that like?
Unfortunately, that might be something that I didn't work on. I don't remember the musical part specifically. Like I said, there were 3 shoppers. So there were 3 people doing the job that I did. And we sort of split off into our individual things. Like we had, we were just delegated little, tasks or areas of work. And things that were new were generally, or, things that were episodic, like appeared in one episode and then didn't. Those were generally the province of one of the other shoppers. And I think Lane Abramson in particular did Paris Geller's penthouse because that was new. I did mostly the things that were returning. So things that had appeared in the original series, stuff that required research or furniture that required reupholstery. That was mostly my purview. We call them permanent sets on television. sets that you return to episode after episode, season after season. So putting together the permanent sets, the ones that everybody knows and loves, the Dragonfly, Emily Gilmore's mansion, Lorelai's house, things like that. Those were my, third of the work. And then the other 2/3, the footwork, which is really what the set decoration shoppers do, is the footwork for the decorator. The footwork is done by the other shoppers.
So what do you have coming up?
Well, because of COVID, a lot of us don't have much going on because filming has been sort of paused in Los Angeles for the last 4 months. I did complete recently the new Supermarket Sweep series. We started prepping it right before the shelter-in-place order in California went into effect. And then we had to shut down completely, clear out our offices. And then in June, we got to come back, which was amazing. And we produced this show in a completely COVID-safe manner, lots of distancing, everyone wearing masks, sort of departmental shift changes on set, so there weren't too many people there at any given time. And that's going to be on ABC on October 19th, I think. And it's just a full-on remounting of the original Supermarket Sweep game show that everyone loves so much. And it's the set looks gorgeous. I'm very proud of it. It's a lot of fun. And I think that it's the joy in our lives that people need right now. So I'm very excited for that to air.
That's awesome. Yeah, Tabby, we should watch that one for our show.
Yes, we should.
So, do you have any final thoughts before we go to the outro?
You asked you asked about, I think, choosing things maybe as a replacement for what I couldn't tell you about, the musical. Because so much of my work was based on bringing back the permanent sets and figuring out where things had gone to. A lot of my work did involve calling up a lot of the old decorators and asking them questions about what they remembered. A lot of them are retired now because they, it's 15 years later. And I went on some really funny wild goose chases. In particular, there was this one path that I was going down where I was trying to find Lorelai's bed in her bedroom. Her bedroom went through a renovation in the second half of the series, and it had sort of like a Laura Ashley, like kind of neo-colonial, a little more of an upscale feel than it had before. And there was this new bed, and it was big and wood and almost sort of a cannonball bed, had like knobs, and it was really solid. And we really wanted to try to get that bed back because it would be the one that viewers remembered from the last season. So we hunted down this bed from everywhere. We tried all of our vendors. We tried like HD Buttercup and, every Laura Ashley and every furniture store that had existed in the early 2000s and ones that didn't anymore. We looked at every prop house in town that could rent it to us. And I think finally someone said, what it really looks like is the Dunphys bed on Modern Family. And I hadn't watched the show, so I pulled up a screen grab, again, from some very helpful fan blog. And it's the same bed. It is Claire and Phil Dunphy's bed in Modern Family. And I thought first, I was like, oh, well, maybe it's one of the same beds. And I can call them and I can find out where they got it. And I called up the set decorator for that season for Modern Family. And he said, well, all I know is it was from HD Buttercup, who are a furniture maker, but it was long since discontinued from them and they didn't have any more stock. And he said, I think we bought it from like a sale. I think the Warner Brothers Prop House had a sale a few years ago, and we just purchased it from them because that's generally what you do for permanent sets is you don't rent it for 4 years, you just buy it. I'm fairly certain that that's the same bed, because I had Modern Family check all their purchase records, all of their POs. They didn't have the bed made. They didn't rent it from anybody. They bought it from from one of the vendors, getting rid of excess stuff sales, essentially. And I think they bought it from us. And then they used it for several seasons. And we couldn't, I asked, just as a Hail Mary, I asked the decorator if we could possibly get it back from them. And their response was, no, please, we need it for our own set, which is completely understandable. But it was the craziest end to that wild goose chase. I ended up calling vendors and having them ask about something that had existed 10 years ago. I had them pull the bed out of storage and take photos of the underside of it so we could see if there was a maker's mark on it. And I begged and pleaded the other show to give us access to that, but they were like, no, of course we can't do that. So it's sort of the strangest, longest journey that a television bed has ever gone on.
That is a crazy story. That is awesome.
And there were a lot of things like that too. When we were trying to hunt down all of the original furniture, sometimes it was easy as just being in the Warner Brothers prop house and looking up and being like, oh my God, there's the chair. It's the same chair. Sometimes we would look at a sofa and be like, well, that's the same shape. Maybe I can have it reupholstered with something like the original fabric. And then you would pull up a corner and see that the original fabric was still there and that sofa had been reupholstered. I remember that we found all of the dining chairs for the Dragonfly Inn. They're these sort of bamboo chinoiserie, bright green chairs with padded seats. And we were looking at screenshots in the Warner Brothers prop house, and then we looked down the aisle and we were like, it's exactly like those. Oh my God, it's those. And they had just been painted black and had different padded seats on them. But they were the same chairs. So some of them were really, really easy finds like that, as long as you just imagined what 10 years worth of use could have done to the item. And some of them were, dead and gone forever. Some of them we were able to dig back up. But there were some real treasure hunts on that show, and some of them were successful, and then some of them weren't, and we just had to choose something that was as similar as possible that also fit the style, and then kind of just live with it and be like, well, that's what 10 years can do. That's what we can give you back after 10 years have passed.
Oh, wow. Well, Rae, thank you so much for being on. It was an absolute joy to have you. Everyone, please go watch all the things that she does. Go watch Supermarket Sweep and A Year in the Life and everything. Thank you once again.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. It's been great being here.
Now, please write us with any suggestions at thefirst6podcast@gmail.com.
This is an experiment, so please tell us what you think and if you want more of these interviews.
If you haven't already, please subscribe.
Keep watching.
And keep listening.
Thank you for listening to the First Six Podcast. This show is hosted by Molly Southgate and Tabby Hollowed. It is edited by Rob Southgate and produced by Southgate Media Group in conjunction with Mastery Media. You can find us on Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, and Facebook at the First Six Podcast. Get in touch with the show at thefirst6podcast@gmail.com. Please rate and review us wherever you listen to this show. It really helps. Thanks again for listening. Catch you on the next channel.